Hi there, my name is Mary Beth Lindsay. I'm an educator and prevention specialist at Solace Crisis Treatment Center. I should not be saying anything today that is anything too specific about sexual violence acts or showing any images about sexual violence. However, if I do happen to say anything that causes any uncomfortability, please make sure to take care of yourself. If that's pause this video, take a breath, get some water, do whatever you need to do. But I do want to make sure that you are aware that we will be speaking about consent today. Now, I want us to first start with talking about TV shows like Law and Order SVU. If you haven't seen it, don't worry. Think about Cops or think about a movie where there is a scene specific to sexual assault. All right? Got it in your brain? Thinking about it? Cool. Now, when you see this episode, and it's an episode about sexual assault, how do they usually depict or describe what the rapist looks like? Okay, I think I heard you say creepy dude. Yeah, more often than not, we gender the person. It's usually a male. What does creepy dude drive? I heard you say it, a van, right? Now, where does the sexual assault take place? Maybe the basement of a party, maybe a park, maybe a dark alley. And what time of day usually? Night, right? So then let's think about the victim, the person who's getting hurt. How can we describe that person? Well, when I'm in front of students, usually we start to talk about, is that person very strong? No, typically they're kind of weak, or if they're athletic, they may not just be as strong as their offender, right? Or are they a bad girl? Oh, and I gendered the person too. More often than not, they show the victim as being a female. Now, is she really strong? No. Is she really a bad girl, like doing bad things? No, more often than not, they try to put her into this innocent little frame. And then if we go on to describe more specifically about her hair, sometimes we see more often than not, the answer is blonde. So if she's got blonde hair, what else can we assume? She more than likely has blue eyes. And even more so, we can assume that she's probably a white girl. Now, the storyline we have heard over and over and over again, even if you haven't watched the show, is causing harm. It causes harm because let's start off with the rapist. We said that he was a creepy dude who drives a van, right? Okay, so in real life, do we think it's more often than not that the victim knows their offender, their rapist? Or is it more often a stranger? What do you think? If you said more often than not it's somebody the victim knows, then you're right. It's over 86% of the time someone the victim knows, not a stranger. So how come they always just keep teaching us stranger danger, huh? Stranger danger, there definitely is a reason for it, and some of those assaults do happen. So if the assault was in a dark alley or a park, then possibly it would be more so a stranger danger scenario. And then it comes to how we may miss harmful behaviors in others because of this storyline. I want you to think about when you see the news and it's a news about a rape or sexual assault and the reporters go to the neighborhood to speak to somebody about the crime that happened. Think about how when a neighbor who's not affiliated with the crime, but they do want to speak to the reporter, and they come up to the reporter and the reporter says, hey, did you ever think this person could be capable of committing such a crime? Talking about that neighbor who committed the crime. And what does the neighbor usually say? Usually the neighbor's like, no, had no clue, never thought they could hurt a fly. They were always so nice to me. Well, it's causing harmful behaviors in others, the storyline, because we're all looking for that stranger who looks like a creepy dude driving a van. Now, in the news, say that it was like a single mom that came home in that neighborhood and had all her groceries. And she came home and that neighbor who the other person said never would hurt a fly says, oh, well, hey, let me help you with your groceries. And the single mom says, oh, no, I got it. Thank you. I'm good. And then he says, no, I insist. Let me help you. And she says, oh, I thank you, but I'm good. And then he says, now, don't hurt my feelings. I'm trying to help. Let me help you take in your groceries. Okay, fine. You can help me. And they both pick up the groceries. They go in the house. What did he learn about her in that moment? He learned that if he can continue to push those boundaries, that she's eventually going to give in. Now, I do want to get into how we also can miss harmful behaviors in ourselves because of this storyline. There was a college survey done several years ago, and this college survey had to do with sexual assault. Everybody who volunteered to do the survey had committed sexual assault, so they knew what the survey was about. And so there were some blunt questions, and they went like this. 1, have you ever held someone down in order to have sex with them? Yes. 2, have you ever gotten someone drunk in order to have sex with them? Yes. 3, have you ever gotten someone high on drugs in order to have sex with them? Yes. 4, have you ever continued to have sex with somebody after they said no or stop? Yes. 5, have you ever raped someone? No. Any ideas of why they would say no to that question when they were so honest about the others? If you're thinking to yourself that maybe they didn't know what rape was, maybe they didn't really know that that's what all those things were, that could be a possibility. Could it also be a possibility that they don't see themselves as the creepy dude in the van? Probably. Because that monster image that we keep seeing, it affects the people who do harm as well. People who look like people can do bad things. Now let's talk about how that storyline also reinforces safety tips of how we keep women safe from sexual assault. So I want everybody to think about women-identified humans in their life right now. So if you have somebody in the house, maybe ask them. Think about the safety tips that they have been told to keep them safe from sexual assault. Here we go. 1, don't go out at night. We call that the reverse vampire. Get it? Okay. 2, clothing. Make sure to wear clothing that is not skimpy or revealing. 3, go out alone? No, always have a buddy with you. Maybe tell them where you're going. Always have your tracking location on. 4, have a weapon. Pepper spray, have something to protect yourself. So do these sound sort of familiar? There's this thing that we keep doing because this safety tip list, we keep sharing this list because unfortunately the behavior hasn't been fixed yet. But let's go through this list really quick. When we tell somebody that they shouldn't be wearing clothing that's too revealing, it's making it sound like men can't control themselves. It makes it sound like they're animals and they won't be able to resist their urges if the clothing is just too revealing on a woman. And that's just doing a disservice to men. Men are human beings and they can control themselves. Now, it's almost as silly or ludicrous, which means silly, as saying a man walking down the street in a football jersey just asking to be tackled. Just as weird, right? So clothing doesn't make sexual assault happen, yet we continue to tell women to be careful what they're wearing. Do not go out at night. Well, I once had a student say, well, what if she needs milk? Okay, yeah, some women are gonna still go out at night, but I mean right now, don't be alone down Agua Fria or Cerrillos in the middle like 3 a.m. at night walking by yourself. That's what I'm talking about. We also have drinking. Now, if a person drinks when they're of age, if a female takes a drink, her friend comes in, she puts her drink down, she runs over to hug her friend, and then comes back to her drink and it was an open container. Should she take another sip out of that cup? No. She needs to get another drink, right? Because we don't know what could have happened to that drink in the 5 seconds that she left the drink to go say hey to her friend. So women are taught they have to always have their drink in their hand, or they have to be watching who is pouring their drink, putting again the responsibility on the woman to keep themselves safe rather than fixing the behavior. See? And now let's get to weapon. Everybody always thinks, oh, okay, duh, have a weapon. All right, more often than not, we talk about pepper spray. I'll be honest, I have pepper spray. Time out on that, and let's think about scary movies. You know how in the scary movie when a woman's running around away from the bad thing, the bad person or the spirit or whatever it is, the doll, and they're running and running and running away from the person or the thing, and then they're getting to their car and they've got the keys out and they're getting the keys and they put them in the door and then they drop the keys and you're sitting there, you're like, what? Don't drop the keys. And so then she gets down, she gets the keys, she's fumbling again, and the thing gets her, right? Well, when we're sitting there watching the movie, I mean, we're probably a little stressed just because of our empathy going off, but more often than not, we're going to be able to logically think, Duh, I would have had that clicker going 5 seconds before I ran up to the car. Or why did she even not take off those heels when she was running, right? We start to think about those things because we're not in that adrenalized state. When we are in an adrenalized state, we lose our ability to use small motor functions. Small motor functions being fingers. What do you need to operate pepper spray with? Finger. Not only do you need to push down the pepper spray, you also have to unlock it and then push down. So if a person isn't aware of that adrenaline inside of them and then they need to use that pepper spray, they could more often than not hurt themselves with the pepper spray than be able to defend themselves with the pepper spray. So more often than not, we think weapon, as long as this person has a weapon, they'll be safe. But really, we don't know what's going to happen to us when we're in an adrenalized state. Now, let's go through that safety tip list again. Do we think that safety tip list is 100% always going to keep somebody safe from sexual assault? No, y'all are smart. You know that it's not. Has there been somebody who's been sexually assaulted who was wearing head to toe in clothing? Yeah. Has there been somebody sexually assaulted who's never drank before? Yeah. Has there been someone sexually assaulted who went out with their friends? Yeah. Has there been somebody sexually assaulted in the daytime? Yes. So see, the safety tip list is not 100%, but we do keep passing on the safety tip list because we don't know how else to fix it until we can hold the other people accountable and stop needing this list. So say in real life a sexual assault has taken place. How often do you think that is reported? Not often. Less than half the time do reports of sexual assault become reported. That is because, well, the survivor may be scared they won't be believed. A lot of the time, victim blaming is very big in our society. They're scared of being not believed, so they keep it to themselves. Or if it's somebody they know, they're scared that they will be shunned from the family or from their friends, and their whole world will blow up. And for what? And unfortunately, our system is not the best when it comes to sexual assault victims and survivors. Only 6 rapists will go to jail. Not to say that jail is the right place for sexual offenders to go to. However, do we have another institution at this time? No. So what about people who know their offender? If it's their boyfriend or girlfriend. They may not want to report. They don't want what happened to happen again, but they don't want to get that person in trouble because they love them. And if a person is a member of the immigrant community, do you think they want to call the police right away? No, especially with our political climate right now. So more often than not, a lot of sexual assault is not reported because unfortunately the world has not been set up to help support that survivor, and we're trying to change that. Now let's talk a little bit about the law in New Mexico. In New Mexico, rape does not have to be physically forced to be considered rape, nor does the victim, or what we like to call them, survivor, have to say no. Okay, well, let's start with the physical force. How else could we be forced into something we don't want to do other than physically? Well, we could be emotionally forced into something, and also we could be verbally forced into something. We could be told, oh, if you don't do this, I'm gonna hurt so-and-so. Or if you don't do this, I'm gonna tell your mom that I let you play those rated M video games, right? So they know that more often than not, the victim or survivor may not be held down with force and with a weapon to then have this rape occur. It could be something completely else. Now, when it comes to saying no, why would somebody not say no if they didn't like what was happening to them? Well, what if it was somebody they knew? What if this is their boyfriend or girlfriend or somebody that they love very much? It may be really awkward or hard to say no, right? Also think about how unconscious people, can unconscious people say no? So let's talk about consent. How old does a person have to be in New Mexico to be able to legally consent to have sex? 13. Now, it's not just 13-year-olds can have sex with whomever they like. It is within the range of 4 years, including the year they are. So if a 13-year-old wants to have sex with a 13, 14, 15, or 16-year-old, if they legally consent to anyone in this age range, they are protected by the law to legally consent to have sex. So a 13-year-old could consent to a 14, 15, or 16-year-old. Now, do you think when the Roundhouse was making this rule that they were like, how old should kids start to be when they start having sex, Sally? 13 sounds good, let's put 13 down. You think that's what happened? No, probably not. But are there 13-year-olds having sex? Yeah. And what New Mexico is doing is that they are going to be real about that instead of trying to deny that 13-year-olds are having sex. Because 13-year-olds are going to need what? They're going to need condoms. They're going to need birth control. And one that not a lot of people ever say when I'm in classrooms, they're going to need screening and treatment for sexually transmitted infections. Because, and also, they're going to need all of those things without whose permission? Parents. Maybe some parents are going to be cool about having this conversation. However, if a 13-year-old gets an STI, more often than not, they're going to just be like, what do I do with this? And are they going to go tell their mom, hey mom, after band, I need you to take me to the clinic. I think I have an STI. No, that's more than likely not going to happen. I don't know a lot of adults who could have a conversation with their parent about a sexually transmitted infection. So they are going to need access to those things, and they can have access to these items at Santa Fe High and Capitol High at the Teen Health Center. They're going to need all those things because if not, and the 13-year-old has a sexually transmitted infection and they're just going to say, no, it's not happening, no, then what could happen is it could grow. They could get sicker depending on the STI. And if they're continually having sex without protection, they're spreading it. So that is why the law is the way it is, so it can protect these 13-year-olds. Now, let's do some math. All right. Now, so if a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old get together, 13, 14, 15, 16, can they legally consent to have sex? Yeah. Can a 14-year-old consent to a 15-year-old? 13, 14, 15? Yeah. How about a 15 and a 12-year-old? No. Anybody know why? 12-year-old and younger cannot consent to have sex with anybody. Now, what's interesting is that the law changes again at 16. At 16, a 16-year-old can consent to have sex with whomever they like older than them, as long as that person does not have a technical position of power or authority. So as long as that 23-year-old is working at Blake's Lotaburger, does not have a role like a coach or a religious leader or a teacher, doesn't have that role in society, they're just kind of working a retail job, then that 16 and 23-year-old legally are backed by the law to have a consensual sexual relationship. But let's think about it. When it's in the 4-year range, 13, 14, 15, 16, 13 and a 15-year-old, they could be in the same class, right? Their birthdays may line up in different times of the year. But when it comes to a 16 and a 23-year-old, 23-year-old's still going to have power over that person just by their age difference, right? So that is the law when it comes to being able to consent to have sex. But we hear the word consent so much lately, but we don't really hear a lot more about what it is. So consent, another word for consent could be permission. Consent in a sexual way is what we're talking about today and a lot of times. However, consent can be something small as, hey mom, can I have 20 bucks? I need to go buy this thing, instead of just grabbing the 20 bucks out of mom's purse and running, right? You may get the no, you accept the no and go on, but you ask for consent, and that is where it doesn't always have to be a sexual way for when we hear consent. Getting someone's permission is something we should always be practicing every day. So let's talk about what consent actually is. Consent is voluntary. Two people are going to need to volunteer for this adventure of kissing, making out, having sex. Two people volunteering, they're both going to... Consent also has to be sober. Now, does it mean that when two people get drunk and have sex that it automatically means it's sexual assault? No. Two people get drunk and have sex and they both agree to it. The way they wake up the next morning, they're like, yep, that's what I wanted to do. Then that's consensual sex that they just happen to have alcohol involved with. Or one wakes up and they're like, ooh, never doing that again, but yep, I wanted to do it. That's a bad hookup. That is not sexual assault. However, if somebody wakes up the next morning, they're like, whoa, wait a minute, I was at the party, here I am, where are my clothes? Then we could be stepping into the world of sexual assault. When I spoke about the college survey earlier, talking about how if there was a question if had they ever gotten someone drunk in order to have sex with them. There was a follow-up question if they said yes. The follow-up question was, how many times? It was an average of 6 times that they had done this. Consent has to be verbal. Now, I usually talk to some students about this and I'll say, how do we know when 2 people are about to kiss each other? How do we know? And they'll say, oh, they lean in, or they're looking at their lips, or the other person's lips, or they start to lean in a little bit, and then this. If you haven't seen the movie Hitch, Will Smith says, the guy, I know who's supposed to make the move in a traditional relationship, in a heterosexual, straight couple? The man, right? Traditionally, we've always taught the men that they have to make the move, which is a lot of pressure to put on the guys. But in the movie Hitch, he always will say, the guy needs to go 90% and stop, and then let her go the other 10, adding up to 100, right? Now, there's all kinds of math equations you can do to it, but can we all agree that those are forms of body language? Yeah. That's trying to read all these signals, to seem cool, to then make the move, right? Well, does it seem awkward if somebody was going to ask to kiss somebody? Maybe. And it seems that way because we've been taught that it's awkward. Where have we been taught about it being awkward? The movies. So think about for a second when there is 2 people in the movie and they're finally about to kiss. Usually those things happen that we just talked about, but then the music may change, and then there's fireworks and it's raining, her makeup's not moving, the man takes the woman, he dips her down, he kisses her, and everybody just knew it was gonna happen. But here's the thing. When it's real life, we can be really awkward, vulnerable human beings, not movie stars. But here's the thing. The movie star knows, my character kisses this character here after this line, right? And then they go forward with the cinematic and the features and everything. But I can guarantee you those actors are talking off screen and they're saying, hey, I'm gonna lean to the right and kiss you. If you are okay with that, I might take your back, do this. That is how they're going to get consent off screen. Sometimes we just don't get to see that part in the movies. Now, how I talked about where the guy has to make the move more often than not in a straight couple, well, I looked it up. It said, I typed in how to know how to kiss somebody, right? Something like that. And it was basically coming from the standpoint thinking I was a guy and going that way, right? Even though there's so many couples in the world these days. So it said all the things we said, look at the lips, this and that, blah, blah. And then there was one that was so silly and it said, if her nostrils are flaring and she's not mad at you, that means she wants to kiss you. Nostrils flaring being when their nostrils get big. That seems really hard to be looking for, right? Seems really hard. Now, I get the whole thing about wanting to be cool and feel like a movie star because we're worried about it being awkward because we're afraid of ruining what? The moment. But where have we learned about the moment? The movies. So here we are, a society running around trying to be cool when really we could be that awkward, vulnerable human and just say, hey, I'd really like to kiss you right now and see what happens. When I've asked this question before, I had a 7th grader that was like, oh, I know. Tell me, I know. And I said, okay, what is it? And he says, oh, she puts on lip gloss. Okay. So if that was what it was, that young person had just been told something and maybe it worked for somebody, right? But just like on the Google, it's passing on some information that's not accurate. So let's say there's 2 people on a date. I'm gonna make them non-gendered right now. And I'm gonna say chapstick instead of lip gloss. So there's 2 people on this date and they're having a really great time and then all of a sudden it gets really quiet and awkward. No one's saying anything and this person in their head is like, oh God, did I say something dumb? I hope I didn't say anything stupid. I feel really awkward right now. Why aren't we talking? I'm gonna put on some chapstick. And the other person over here is like, this is going really well. I'm having a good time. Oh, they're putting on chapstick. I know what that means. Score for me. And then take him and take a kiss. Okay, silly. Not gonna work like that in real life, right? I'm making this big so you can see it. Now, did the person putting on chapstick get a choice? No. And to be very fair, I don't think this person is trying to think about taking away that person's choice. They're just trying to think of all the things they've learned about how to kiss somebody and seem cool and not ruin the moment, the thing that we would learn about in the movies. But here's the deal. If the person putting on chapstick doesn't get a choice and they have had some sort of history of sexual violence, this could really, really harm them. Again, I don't think that's what this person wants. This person may want a second date. But because they were maybe too nervous to just say, hey, I'd really like to kiss you right now, that person could have turned around and said, hey, cool, sounds good. They're both at the green light. They both know what's going to happen. Or it could go down like, hey, I'd really like to kiss you right now. And the person says, well, I just ate a lot of garlic. Let me have a Tic Tac, some gum, and then yes. Or it could say no. And the person could say, hey, I'd really like to kiss you right now. And the person says, wow, I can't even believe you had the confidence to ask me that. But no, I don't feel that same way. It hurts. It hurts. Gotta check into the Heartbreak Hotel for the night. Yeah, that's a Kanye West lyric. But at the same time, that person's ego may be damaged for a little bit, but if they had that character in them to ask, to check in with that person, and then accept the no, that person's gonna learn a lot. They're gonna leave, they're gonna know more than if they hadn't asked. Now, here's the thing. If this person's gonna be hurt because they got told no, some people are like, oh, that's so awkward and horrible. And it is. But life is about some sort of rejection. Rejection's gonna happen whenever we take a risk sometimes. And we have to learn to take that rejection. It's a hard thing to do. But the person whose ego was hurt a little bit because they were told no, which one's gonna get hurt more? The person with the ego or the person who wasn't asked and that had some history of sexual trauma? This one could hurt a lot more, okay? This person's gonna be okay and they may have learned a lesson and they may form a friendship, which is a really big deal, right? Next in consent is enthusiastic. Now, two people should be enthusiastic about taking a next step in their relationship, taking the first kiss, moving on into the world of sex, right? Now, if two people are not enthusiastic, if it's like, hey, you wanna have sex later? And the other person's like, oh, I guess, that's not gonna be fun, right? Two people are gonna need to be enthusiastic, excited to take on that next adventure. And consent has to be continual. Saying yes to kissing the same as saying yes to sex? No, a whole nother conversation has to happen then. And also back to the verbal part of consent, if it's too much to be awkward to ask them to kiss somebody, do we think those people should be having sex yet? Maybe not, right? Now, saying yes to sex on Tuesday, does that mean saying yes to sex on Saturday? No, again, those two people are going to have to continue to get that consent. Guess what? Consent even happens in long-term relationships. People who have been together for 20 years, they're still continuing to get that consent. Because guess what? We're human beings, we change all the time, and we still need to consent to one another. That concludes our time for today. And I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that Solace Crisis Treatment Center, even though our building is closed, we are still here for our survivors. Our 24/7 crisis hotline is available at full capacity. So that means if somebody needs to call because of something that happened 20 years ago, or something that just happened yesterday, or something that they just need to talk out, they can call and speak to an advocate at 505-986-9111. Again, that's 505-986-9111. Sometimes the biggest thing we can do is reach out for help.